And the chemicals that you can put in the bird and the rat and the mouse chow is the same chemicals that they're putting in human chow now. And that's what's making people fat. We're fooling the satiety mechanism in people's brains into systematically overeating. And the chemicals that we put into the chow are SOS, salt, oil, and sugar. Salt, oil, and sugar are not food. They're hyperconcentrated food byproducts that are put into the food to stimulate the brain neurochemistry, to stimulate more dopamine, which is the chemical associated with pleasure. So when you eat those foods with those chemicals,
All right, everyone. What a pleasure it is when I talk about fasting, because all of you are always flooding the DMs on how much should I fast? How often should I do it? What about men versus women? What about if I have this issue and I don't listen? We're going to clear it up today. We're going to clear it up today because I have the best of the best when it comes to fasting, talking about the fasting science. This guy has been at it since I was born, 1984. He is the OG of fasting for real, for real. Dr. Alan Goldhamer is one of the world's leading experts on medically supervised water-only fasting as a treatment for sickness, chronic diseases, right? For you to get in your optimum health, to feel good in your body. And since I was born, this guy has been the director of True North Health Center in Santa Rosa, California. Since then, he has been helping and supervising fasting for more than 20,000 people. Okay, so I'm talking, we have a robust amount of evidence, and I'm going to ask him the real questions on here. He is the author of the Health Promoting Cookbook and co-author of The Pleasure Trap, Mastering the Hidden Force that Undermines Health and Happiness. And he's also the principal author of 2 landmark studies that showed evidence of the benefits of water-only fasting, as well as numerous cases reporting on published peer-reviewed index journals evaluating the effects of water-only fasting and the treatment of a variety of conditions. And guess what? We're going to go over most of those conditions on the show today. Welcome to the show. Doc, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Listen, you have such a calm demeanor. I can feel you feel healthy. Is that because you've just been fasting and your nervous system is just feeling good?
No, I just, health results from healthful living, so I try to live healthfully.
Of course, you practice what you preach.
Absolutely.
God forbid all the doctors in America did that. Exactly. Okay, so off air, I was telling you, we have a fantastic group of people who listen to the show. They're educated, right? This isn't just like an introductory show. People love to learn here. And we have a lot of women that listen to the show. So I want to go off the bat. Is fasting different for men versus women?
Absolutely. Women are different than men. They have different physiology. They have different percentage fat stores. The approach is the same, but the experience is definitely, different for men versus women.
Okay. What type of things are different in men versus women when it comes to fasting?
Just in general, women are a lot easier to deal with than men. They have
okay.
higher tolerances for discomfort. They're tend to be much more patient on average.
Yeah.
They have higher percent body fat stores biologically. They have to survive a period of biological vulnerability called pregnancy and lactation that only women can do.
Yeah.
And so there's definitely differences in how women respond to fasting.
Better tolerance for pain is the big one. I saw this fantastic video where they had electrodes that mimic giving birth, the contractions, and they put them on men. And they were dying, and it wasn't even the beginning contractions. It wasn't even midway through the pregnancy. I mean, through the giving birth, and it was incredible to see how much pain tolerance women have.
Some people say that males are basically females that never fully developed biologically. So
I could attest. I know some males, maybe even me. Okay, so water only fast versus me just going, I'm gonna fast for the next week, 2 weeks. Let's see how this goes. I'm assuming there's a difference in that, right? A difference in the safety, maybe efficacy. Why is medically supervised fast so important?
Well, fasting itself can be a really intense process. It gives the body a chance to mobilize and eliminate a lot of those accumulated materials that have stored in the body, some of which shouldn't be there. And not everybody's a good candidate for fasting. So one of the things you have to do if we're talking about long-term fasting is go through the medical history and make sure that that person is likely to do well and hold up well to fasting. And the way you do that is medical history, a physical examination, and some baseline laboratory testing. And that way we can pick out the things that would likely present a problem with fasting. There's rare things like MCAD, medium chain acetocoenzyme A dehydrogenase deficiency, which is a genetic defect where you wouldn't be able to fast because you can't break down fatty acids. There's common problems with kidney issues, where if you don't have adequate kidney function, you can dehydrate and get into electrolyte problems that can lead to cardiac problems that could result in poor outcomes. It's also important to remember that when people go through long-term fasting, there's an important recovery phase. So you could do a very good job of fasting where you rest and maintain hydration, but then go too rapidly into refeeding, and you can get what's called refeeding syndrome, where there's a significant imbalance in electrolytes can result in serious problems or death. So avoiding those problems is important, especially when you're talking about long-term fasting. The big issues are around hydration and cardiac function.
Okay.
And fortunately, we've learned to monitor people, and we can make it safe. In fact, we've published a fasting safety study, the first fasting safety study that looked at a large number of people over a number of years, all the people that went through True North Health, and monitored every symptom in every patient, and then categorized according to a standardized criteria, the common criteria for adverse events from the American Cancer Society, and published a paper in the peer-reviewed literature on the safety and efficacy of long-term fasting and looking at the adverse events that are associated with it. And what we were able to prove is that when fasting is done according to protocol, it can be safe. And now that is useful information because Human Subject Committee anywhere in the world in the past wouldn't approve fasting or wouldn't approve fasting except in, say, younger people because they were worried somebody really old, like 65 or older, would be too old to hand up to it. Now we've shown that both young people and older people can safely fast if they follow a reasonable protocol, which includes history, exam, lab, and appropriate monitoring. Mm-hmm. It's important that people, when they're doing long-term fasting, they're resting. You'd think, well, if I was vigorous, wouldn't I lose more weight? And you would, but it wouldn't be more fat. What you do is you force a process called gluconeogenesis, where the body has to break down protein in order to get sugar. Mm. And then you end up losing a lot of lean tissue rather than the fat that you're there to try to mobilize. Mm. And so a lot of it's not intuitive, it's counterintuitive. Yeah. And so if you want to lose the most fat, then you have to rest when you fast. Mm. If you want to lose just the most weight and you didn't care about dehydration or burning protein, then of course you'd be all active. Yeah. Now again, right now we're talking about longer term water-only fasting. So extended periods of water-only fasting would range from a few days to a few weeks to a month or longer. Mm. So some of our patients fast as long as 40 days. Wow. The real question I think we should ask to begin with is, why would we want to fast? Why would we even need to fast? What's the real problem? And the problem is people are too fat. And when people are fat, they have a type of fat called visceral fat. And it isn't just like subcutaneous tissue, which is storage. It actually acts like a tumor. Mm. So visceral fat produces inflammatory products like IL-6 and TNF-alpha and increases acute phase reactive proteins that leads to inflammation. And that inflammation is the cause of coronary artery disease, diabetes, type 2, autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and ulcerative colitis, ankylosing spondylitis and psoriasis and eczema. And it also leads to certain types of cancer, including lymphoma. So the fatter we are and the more visceral fat we have, the more inflammation we have, the more vulnerable we are to these chronic degenerative diseases. These diseases used to be so rare they were called the diseases of kings, because it was only the wealthy elite kings could eat the diet that leads to the visceral fat that leads to the problems that are now ubiquitous, because 3/4 of people are overweight or obese. And so now we've got this epidemic of obesity, an epidemic of visceral fat. And we're busy running around treating the end results, the diseases, with bypass surgeries and pills and potions and powders, instead of actually dealing with the cause of the disease, which is the dietary excess, the smoking and the drinking that leads to the obesity, that leads to the visceral fat that causes those diseases. Mm. It turns out that fasting is an effective way of giving the body a chance to mobilize and eliminate those accumulated materials. And what's fascinating we've published a study recently where we used a DEXA scanner to do detailed body composition and find out what happens in fasting. And obviously you lose weight when you fast, average of about 1 pound a day. Now that includes protein, water, fiber, glycogen, and fat. And then when you come off the fast, you regain weight. But it turns out the weight you gain when you come off the fast is water, protein, fiber, and glycogen, not fat. The fat loss continues. And what's even more fascinating is that visceral fat is preferentially mobilized in the fast. So let's say, for example, you take a male or a female, you fast them for a couple of weeks, they're going to lose about 10% of their body weight, but they'll lose about 20% of their total fat, but they'll lose more than half of their visceral fat. So visceral fat is preferentially mobilized. If you go on a fast and lose 10% of your body weight, you don't necessarily lose 10% of your tumor. The tumor may disappear entirely. So how come you might lose 10% of weight, but how would you lose 100% of a tumor? It's because the body has an innate intelligence and it mobilizes materials in inverse proportion to its needs. So stuff that shouldn't be there tends to get broken down first. And critical tissues like nervous tissues don't get broken down at all. So the body's trying to conserve its resources. And this biological adaptation called fasting, it can be used to undo the consequences of the dietary excess that leads to the disease of kings.
It's beautiful. Disease of kings is the best part to close that segment, because when I think about how we are eating like kings and queens, right? Overeating, and it's not even good, nutritious food. But I love that you said the downstream effects, what we're treating, and when it comes to the visceral fat, what it's releasing into our body is what really is causing so many of these disruptions. And we're not thinking about that because we're just going, oh, I need to lose weight. Visceral fat, it builds up around the belly.
And in the organs.
And in the organs. So would it be important for people to have a DEXA scan or some sort of, how would we know if we're viscerally fat? Let's do a little chat on something crucial, omega-3. Now, I'm all about keeping things clean and pure, whether the food is on my plate and the supplements are in my cabinet. When it comes to omega-3s, Puori's O3 Ultra Pure Fish Oils is my go-to choice. And it's important. We need omega-3s for heart, brain, and eye health. But why Puori? Because not all omega-3s are created equal. Actually, a lot of the omega-3s that you see on the store shelf and online are really crappy. Omega-3s are the most sensitive supplements out there to poor quality, oxidation, chemicals, heavy metals, just all the nasty stuff. Now, the thing about Puori is every batch undergoes rigorous clinical testing for over 200 contaminants, and you can check out these results yourself. With a simple QR code on the bottle, you can see the full report on the fish oils that you are consuming. That's transparency, right? At its highest level. You're going to check literally the product that's in front of you. Puori's O3 Ultra Pure Fish Oil delivers a potent dose of EPA and DHA without any of the necessary extras. And what I mean by that is go check out your fish oil. So, a lot of them out there have low EPA, DHA, which are the therapeutic constituents in fish oil, and just have a lot of other oils. They have a lot of flax oil, and most of the oil in there is flax oil. No. If you're going to get fish oils, you want high EPA and DHA like Puori. Puori is offering 20% off of their O3 Ultra Pure Fish Oil and all their other fantastic products for Heal Thyself listeners. Yeah, that's 20% off the top of the already discounted subscription price. Just head to Puori.com and use my promo code DRG. That is Puori.com/DRG to take care of your health with Puori.
Well, if you're overweight, you inevitably have visceral fat. What's even more insidious is that you don't necessarily have to be large. Some people are not overweight, but they're over fat. Because too high a percentage of the body is made up of fat. And you can do a DEXA scanner with special software like we used during the research to quantify it exactly. But you don't need to. Because what's really great is as soon as you start providing the causes of health, diet, sleep, and exercise, the body will begin mobilizing the visceral fat, losing weight. If you do it in fasting, it just happens a lot quicker. But it'll happen going on a whole plant food, SOS-free diet as well. SOS, of course, is the international symbol of danger, and it stands for the chemicals that are put in food that fool our satiety mechanism. We call it the pleasure trap, was the title of our first book. And so you fool the satiety mechanism into overeating. For example, if you take rats or mice or birds, and you let them eat as much as they want of their normal rat chow or bird chow, they'll get to a certain size. But if you put certain chemicals in the chow, they'll systematically overeat. The rodents will gain 49% of their body weight in 60 days. The birds will get so fat they can't even fly. And the chemicals that you can put in the bird and the rat and the mouse chow is the same chemicals that they're putting in human chow now. And that's what's making people fat. We're fooling the satiety mechanisms in people's brains into systematically overeating. And the chemicals that we put into the chow are SOS, salt, oil, and sugar. Salt, oil, and sugar are not food. They're hyperconcentrated food byproducts that are put into the food to stimulate the brain neurochemistry, to stimulate more dopamine, which is the chemical associated with pleasure. So when you eat those foods with those chemicals, you experience, it tastes better. That's what tasting better is more stimulation of dopamine in your brain. You're designed to crave the most concentrated foods that you can get access to, because in the world of our ancient ancestors, we evolved in an environment of scarcity. Most humans didn't even survive long enough to reproduce. They didn't pass on their DNAs. They were what we call the losers. They died before they passed on their genes. You're the product of the winners. The people that got enough to eat didn't get eaten, and they passed on their DNA. And in that environment of scarcity, animals that could tell the difference between valuable foods, high in caloric density, less valuable foods, low in caloric density, they were the ones that survived. And so today, you have in your head a large bulbous neuronal net. It's called the brain, and it's your biggest burner of glucose. And it's disproportionate to the other animals we share the planet with. And so the bottom line was all the human beings that didn't have the ability to fast died. All the human beings that didn't have the ability to fast died because as soon as spring came late, with your big glucose-burning brain, you could only last about a week. You notice chimpanzees, which brains don't convert to burning ketones, they don't ever leave the tropics, do they? Ready supply of food all year round. Humans wandered all over the planet. And were it not for our ability to fast, we would not have been successful. So this very basic biological adaptation, we've learned to use that in a very unnatural situation. That's where people are consistently overfed, and they become fat and have visceral fat. So we take people that are fat, put them on a fast, they mobilize their fat, preferentially mobilize their visceral fat, and guess what? They reverse the diseases of dietary excess. High blood pressure, diabetes, autoimmune disease, and cancers like lymphoma reverse themselves. And then if we can get people to go on a whole plant food diet free of salt, oil, and sugar, they can manage it. They can lose the weight and keep it off. They can normalize their blood pressure, get off the medications. They can normalize their blood sugar levels. They can overcome the autoimmune disease, and they can resolve the cancer.
Beautifully said, because I can feel the passion coming through that, because we think about there is a solution here in front of us, and there's so many sick people. I mean, you mentioned some of the deadliest diseases out here, and you mean to tell me that we have to retrain the body, or have to get the body working in its own mechanisms the way that it knows to, and then retrain the person coming back and eating. I know that when you did your research, you put together the plant-based diet, saying that this is very important for you to come back onto this. Is it because they're reducing their salt, their oil, their sugar inputs on that diet? What is it? Is it the fiber that's helping the microbiome re-educate? Why not a carnivore diet or a ketogenic diet?
Well, because it turns out we're designed to be carbohydrate burners. So you do need adequate protein and fat, and a diet that's whole plant food, that's SOS free, is going to have about 10% of calories from protein. It's going to have 15 to 18% of calories from fat. It's going to be the protein and the fat from whole foods, not from oils, not from processed foods. And it's going to have the balance if it's calories coming from whole plant complex carbohydrates. Right now, most people are freaked out about carbohydrates because most carbohydrates that are eaten are sugar, processed flour products, and pretty much everybody agrees those are a serious, health threat. So what they're trying to do is what are called fasting mimicking diets, diets that mimic some of the effects of fasting. For example, the hunger blunting that's associated with ketosis. So if you go on a high-fat diet and there's no carbohydrate, like in fasting, you have beta-hydroxybutyric acid as the primary fuel in your brain, and that has a hunger blunting effect. So you can go on that diet in short term, you lose weight because you don't have as much hunger. But in the long run, of course, you run into problems because you get into the problems of high-fat, high-protein diets, ranging from gallbladder disease to cancer. So what you can do short term for weight loss isn't necessarily what's good long term for health promotion. If you really want to lose a lot of weight, say overnight, you can lose 40 pounds, just cut your hip off at the thigh. Or take both legs and you can lose maybe 80 pounds. Yeah. But that's not necessarily a good long-term health strategy. Right now, we spend most of our energy as a society treating the leading cause of death, which is heart disease, cancer. What we should do is deal with the actual causes of death, which is smoking, drinking, and eating animal foods and highly processed refined carbohydrates. If we actually treated the actual causes of death, we wouldn't have as much of the leading cause of death to deal with, the diabetes, the heart disease, and the cancer. Yeah. Because those conditions can be reversed and managed if you control what you put in your mouth.
Yeah. We just have to learn.
But it's hard.
Yeah, but it's hard.
Because we're addicts.
Man, I'm all about staying hydrated, especially with pure, clean water. You see me talk about water since the beginning. It was my first post I've ever put out on Instagram in my life. Water isn't just a beverage. It's a vital part of staying healthy, feeling my best, right? Did you know that almost 45% of US tap water contains PFAS? Those forever chemicals, polyfluorinated chemicals that are staying in your body. They're staying in the environment. They're staying in your body for 8, 10, 12, 15 years and more. These harmful chemicals have a serious health implication, especially on your hormones. This is why I talk about AquaTru, another one, bang for buck, the best water filter out there. AquaTru is certified to remove all these contaminants along with 80 other harmful substances. You better not be drinking tap water. So if you need to get quality water pitcher, and something like a Brita doesn't do the same job, right? It doesn't clean out everything. If you want to invest in something for your health, you have to start with a clean water filter. And let me break it down for you. AquaTru purifiers use a 4-stage reverse osmosis purification process to ensure that your water is clean and safe to drink. And the best part is, it's no complicated installation or plumbing. It's a tabletop. AquaTru has options for every home, from countertop purifiers, and they also do under the sink if you want. But the countertop is the one that I have. And you can get these filters that are affordable and they're long lasting and you won't have to worry about constantly replacing them. Personally, I've had AquaTru for quite a while. It's probably 4 or 5 years at this point. My friends have them, the new Carafe that has glass. It's beautiful, but I've been having it for so long. I had the old school one. I probably had Model 1. But it's the way that I drink my water. I replenish it, I put a little salt, and there you go. I got clean water, hydrated, and I'm good to go. I do it every day. AquaTru is offering you, the Heal Thyself listener, 20% off of any purifier. Just go to aquatru.com and enter the code DRG at checkout. That's AQUATRU.com. And don't forget the code DRG for your discount.
We're addicted to the artificial stimulation of dopamine in our brain from the chemicals that are put in our food. It's just like it's hard to quit smoking because you're addicted to nicotine. It's hard to quit drinking if you're an alcoholic because it's hard, of the effect of dopamine stimulation from alcohol. And the reality is it's hard to give up salt, oil, and sugar because people are addicts. Yeah. And so it's easy to say, well, just stop. But the hallmark of addiction is people are doing it not just to feel good, but they feel really bad when they stop. And you try to take these foods away from people and they feel really bad for a while. Yeah. And they don't recognize that they're addicts. And so like if you walk up to an alcoholic and you say, you know how your life, it sucks? It's because you're of the alcohol. They don't go, oh, it's the alcohol. Right. Duh, I had no idea. Yeah. I just won't drink anymore. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. They don't say that. No. They say, mind your own effing business. And, and the same thing, if you explain to a person, oh, you see how you're overweight and you're dealing with all these pain syndromes and whatnot, it's because you're an addict and you need to give up all the short-term pleasure-seeking, self-indulgent behavior. Mm-hmm. People are like all thrilled to hear that. Yeah. And John McDougall likes to say that people love good news about their bad habits. And so if you're trying to sell stuff, what you do is you sell the pleasure trap. You give people what they want, not what they need. Yeah. Tell them what they want, which is how to engage in short-term pleasure-seeking, self-indulgent behavior without having to actually make diet and lifestyle changes. And so if you got a pill or potion that'll do that, they're going to be real interested.
That's selling across the board. It's so powerful because now we're thinking about on a fast, and this is going in my head, will it change my taste buds?
Exactly. Interesting. We've done a study on taste neuroadaptation. And in that study, what we did is we very carefully quantified minimum thresholds of salt and sugar. And then we tested it after fasting in blinded patients. And in fact, it turns out that your sensitivity to salt and sweet changes with fasting. And the hedonic response to salty, fatty, sweet, fatty foods changes. Good foods start to taste good. I got a great story for you. We became a fully covered benefit for California's most powerful labor union, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 3. And they made our program a fully covered benefit. So anybody in the union with diabetes or hypertension could come in and fast. And the very first person they sent us was a guy who had diabetes and hypertension. He was grossly overweight and had massively elevated blood pressure, 220 over 120, capped out on medications. So they said that in order for him to be able to go back to work, he had to, resolve his hypertension. He could come into us and they would take care of it. But they didn't tell him what the program was. So this guy shows up, who's living on cheeseburgers and whatever, and doesn't know that the program is about fasting and dietary change. And he's looking around, he's going, oh no, this is not for me.
Yeah.
I said, no, you're a good candidate for us. He goes, no, you got the wrong guy. No, I got the right guy. I got your name here on the list. Going back and forth. He goes, and I explained to him that, if we got him healthy, he'd be able to get off all his medications. And, he's spending $800 a month on medications. And he said, oh, well, what do I care? The union pays for my medications. And so we went back and forth a little bit. And I finally started thinking about what might motivate him. And I said, you're diabetic, hypertensive, you're on all these meds. We might be able to do something about your little problem. And of course, then he got interested. And he said, why the heck didn't you just say so? So, he's telling me about his diet, and he's a triple cheeseburger guy without the lettuce. If they put the lettuce on, he didn't eat rabbit food and all that kind of stuff. So we know before we start fasting him, we're going to have to get some real food into him. And so we gave him some food from the salad bar and the hot bar, some salad and vegetables, and he's trying to eat it, but he can't swallow it. He's like,
oh, wow.
And I'm thinking, oh my God, he must have a tumor, And I said, it looks like you're having trouble with the food. He said, what food? He said, this is not food. He said, if I have to eat tasteless swill like this, I'd rather just die. He said, why don't you go out to my car and get my 12 inch? And when I'm not looking, just shoot me in the head. So we check him in. He ends up fasting 26 days, loses 50 pounds.
Whoa.
Normalizes his blood pressure, normalizes his blood sugar levels, get him off all of his meds. Afterwards, we're feeding him. But now he's actually eating the food. I said, looks like you're doing a little better with the food. He said, yeah, your damn chef's finally getting the hang of it. It took him 20 minutes to convince him it was the same food.
Wow.
But what had happened is taste neuro-adaptation. Good food started to taste good. Food, he wouldn't have complied for a day if we gave him a piece of paper and said, go eat a good diet. But because he fasted, he cleared himself out, he was now able to appreciate the food. Interesting, I saw him 6 months later at a semi-annual. We're doing blood pressure screening. He said, I'm doing just fine.
Wow. I love that.
So now I learn to talk to people about things they care about. Dying, medical costs, not so much.
No, not so much. Oh, what a wonderful story, man. And this guy's life has changed, right?
And the thing is, people don't believe that they can ever adapt to enjoying whole foods.
Yeah.
But they can. But the problem is, for average person, if you just go on a healthy diet, it takes about a month to neuro-adapt to a low-salt diet. It takes almost 3 months to adapt to a low-fat diet where you feel satisfied without all the fat and the grease. And if you say to somebody, look, I want you to go on this diet, it's going to taste like crap. You're not going to enjoy anything you eat for a month or 3 months. What are they going to say? Oh, that sounds great. Yeah, well, serve it up. I'm all excited about it. But if you can fast them and then the good food tastes good, now all of a sudden you have a little bit better chance of compliance and adherence. It's still difficult.
Yeah.
Because people live in a world designed to give them what they want. And they, everywhere you go, people are selling the pleasure trap.
Yeah.
And it's difficult. And socially. And it's even more difficult for women than men, because women are treated different socially. Like, for example, if a woman comes to our facility and loses 50 pounds and they go back to work, the other women don't go, oh dear, look at you. You must have gone on a whole plant food diet. We're so proud of you. What can we do to help? That's not what they experience. Oftentimes they experience, oh, here she comes, that bitch.
Right.
You know what I mean?
All new.
They know why you lost weight. You make poaching pork. I mean, it's terrible. Men lose 50 pounds, they go back to work. The other men don't notice.
Yeah.
And if they do notice, they don't care. So it's harder if you're a woman, because there's differences in how women interact socially. And there's different pressures that are put on women. So it is harder. And also, they don't lose weight at the same rate. If you put a man and a woman, husband and wife, on the same diet, Man will lose about 3 pounds a week on average, women too, 50% less weight. If you think about it biologically, women essentially are energy conserving fat storage devices because, again, they have to store fat more efficiently in order to survive pregnancy and subsequent lactation. When you're pregnant, your mobility is reduced, your ability to gather is reduced. And so that biological difference is very real. So that's why if a man and woman go on the same diet, they don't lose weight at the same rate.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating. Sometimes women will tell you, the guy, he's out eating In-N-Out burgers at lunchtime and cheating, and the woman's weighing everything, perfect compliance, 4 ounces. It just melts off them. Yeah. So what does that mean if you're a woman and you're trying to lose weight? It means you got to work twice as hard to get half the results. It's not just weight loss either, by the way. It's pretty much everything else too. So, fortunately, I don't make up the rules. So.
Yeah, you just work with them, right? You work within them. Wow. And we think about the couples, and if you are in a relationship, think about it. If you and your partner ever went on a diet, and this is true for you, it probably is. It's so fascinating, right? Because it just shows yes, we're bio individually different, but also just man and a woman doing a fast, going through the same thing. It's
different experience. Well, think about it. Women are full of estrogen, which is a fat storage hormone. If you inject estrogen in men, they get fat. They grow breasts, they get hips. Right. Take the testosterone, put enough testosterone in, the fat melts off them. The problem is they get hairy and get cancer and die. So it's not a good weight loss strategy. Right. But, the point is you can't deny these fundamental differences. These are not psychological differences. These are biological differences. So you have to adapt to those differences.
So let's say I'm over here and I'm a hesitant guy, right? Let's say men listening, they go, yeah, I want to do a fast, but I've been working out and I want to keep all my muscle.
Yes. So one of the things that people have talked about with fasting is you're going to lose your muscle.
Right.
So we did a study with the DEXA scanner, and we looked at specifically what happens to body composition. And what was interesting is, although that example I gave you before where they lost 20% of the fat and 55% of the visceral fat, only lost 4% of lean tissue. And then when you look at those patients at 6 weeks after fasting, the percentage of the body that's made up of lean tissue is actually higher than at baseline. But what continues to come down is the fat, and particularly the visceral fat. So you are reconstituting the body. Now, yes, there is some lean tissue that's used. You don't lose any muscle cells. You're just losing some of the juice, and then you're going to replenish that as you come off the fast. But it is important athletically. If you're in a competitive athletic situation, you have to have recovery time in order to get back your full strength and capacities. But you will, and then some, if you're eating healthfully after the fast.
Great. So, fellas, if you're thinking and you go, hey, I'm going to lose all this muscle, I don't want to fast. I mean, early on, before I even learned about fasting, that was one of the things that I was hesitant about,
Of course.
Look, we want to stay nice and fit, right? We want to keep our muscle, but
getting rid of the fat and the visceral fat, though, helps delineate those muscles. Anyway, as you know, in bodybuilding, that's an important issue, is trying to reduce percent body fat. And this is an effective and efficient way of doing that.
Yeah. So how about, all right, we talked about like the physical benefits. When people go on a fast, there has to be an energetic, emotional, spiritual component here, especially if you're going through a 40-day process. What things have you seen, changes in people that have been really profound?
Isn't it interesting that of all the major religions in the world, the Jews, the Jains, the Hindus, the Muslims, the Christians, they don't agree on everything. And sometimes they're like killing each other in the street over disagreements. But there is one common thing that all major religions have a tradition regarding, and that's fasting, both for spiritual reasons as well as for health reasons. And so there is a commonality there. And we are not a spiritually based facility. So in other words, we're a health-based facility. We have doctors with all kinds of different backgrounds and whatnot. We don't try to impose our beliefs on people. We don't pretend that we have some answer on how to get into heaven or any of that stuff.
Right.
But nonetheless, you cannot help but notice people have a very profound experience when they go on a fast. It changes the way they relate to the world around them. It changes the way they see themselves. There's a reason why every religion has a tradition about fasting, because it does profoundly affect people both on a physical as well as on a psychological and emotional level.
And it's so true, because you read about fasting, and I grew up Christian, so I remember reading about Jesus fasting, and I said, oh.
Yep. Moses, David, Elijah, Jesus, and our patients fast for up to 40 days. I tell them they're in good company.
They're in good company, of course. They're, and it's funny because there's a lot of, even the Amazonian tribes, before you go into these ceremonies, there's a fasting period. First of all, there's eating very clean and getting off of the salt, the sugar, the oils, right? That's part of it. I've done it before. It's funny that you get off the SOS, they know too, and then you go into this like spiritual cleanliness place, and it's just
well, there's I think 1,100 references to fasting in the Christian Bible. I mean, somebody broke them all down for me one time, and it's like it's remarkable.
Yeah.
And I challenge you to find me a religion that doesn't have some type of tradition about fasting. It's almost a universally adopted principle.
And it's sort of like we're stopping the digestion process, all that energy that is keeping us in our heads, and we're sort of getting quiet. I remember we were just talking about it. I go, oh, I gotta get up to True North. I gotta do a fast. And then I'm like, in my head, right, the work stuff, I go, maybe I can film something and it'll be really good and we'll make a whole thing. And you're like, well, you wouldn't be working, Christian. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll just be by myself. And then really looking at stuff. And then I was like, all right, well, I can see that's the connection, right? It's sort of you're not losing yourself. And what am I going to eat? When am I going to eat it? How am I going to eat it? Am I going to meet it with my friends? All that is quiet, and it's just you. It's such a beautiful, it's just incredible, the benefits, because it goes past the physical. When it comes to that physical, I know autoimmune disease is a big one that you're all treating there. And what is happening in the immune system that the fasting is changing, modulating? Everybody here wants to live a long life. I know you do. If you have kids, you definitely want to, right? You just want to live a long, healthy, good feeling life. But what's even better than those years in good health is living free from chronic disease and ailments, right? Unfortunately, many, and most of us, the gap between lifespan and health span is far too wide. With the last years of our lives, we're spent battling illness instead of enjoying our lives to the fullest. And that is why I'm researching products to bring you, the Heal Thyself listener, the best of the best simple way to bridge that gap so you can feel good in your body and have a long, healthy life. And this is when it comes to quality supplements. I'm talking about high quality, rigorously tested supplements like Momentous, creatine, and collagen. I use this combination every single day in my pre-workout without fail. I have the best concoction pre-workout, and Momentous, creatine, and collagen are two of my favorite ones. Why? They're two powerhouses that work together to support your body's repair and performance. Again, I use it for athleticism, but all of us can use it for anything. We use it for our brain, we can use it for our skin, helping you increase your health span and be the best version of yourself for years to come. See, what set Momentous apart from so many companies is that when it comes to clinically researched formulas, they got the best of the best, right? They're following all of the research out there. They're giving you 15 grams of collagen, supported by the various types of collagen in the body, not just one type like a lot of companies out there. You're getting all the types that your body's utilizing. And then creatine. It's my favorite. I actually think most of us should be on creatine, especially if we're not eating enough or we're not eating a variety of diet, because it's not only for muscles, it's for our brain too. It's for our brains, okay? If you're plant-based, you want your brain to get that creatine so it can start functioning at a higher level. Well, when it comes to creatine monohydrate, the gold standard in creatine supplementation, it's important, but you gotta have no fillers. You gotta have no additives. It's gotta be pure, effective ingredients that you can trust. And Momentous goes above and beyond to earn my trust and everyone else's. They're committed to rigorous third-party testing, independent certifications, no compromises. You get what is on the package. So if you're like me and you want to fuel your body with the best of the best, go to livemomentous.com, use the code DRG for 15% off creatine and collagen and all their top-notch products. That is livemomentous.com. Use the code DRG for checkout. Enjoy.
Well, let's talk about autoimmune disease. Autoimmune is a disease where the body attacks itself. So, for example, rheumatoid arthritis. That's where your body's immune system attacks your own joints, and that's what causes the deformity. Mm-hmm. Psoriasis. Your immune system, overly active, attacking your own self. Arthritis, asthma, etc. It's kind of the opposite of cancer. So in cancer, the immune system's not keeping up with aberrant cells through autophagy. Yeah. In 2016, Yoshinori Yoshimi won the Nobel Prize in Medicine. This is recent, where they really recognized the importance of autophagy, or self-healing, self-eating. That's where the body's immune system goes in and cleans up debris and cancer cells before they can become tumors, before they can take over. So in cancer, that system's not working well. And so these aberrant cells are forming faster than you can get rid of them. In autoimmune disease, the immune system is overly active and begins getting confused and attacking your own tissues. And interestingly enough, oftentimes the treatment of cancer leads to autoimmune disease, and treatment of autoimmune disease can lead to cancer.
Right.
They're basically the same process, opposite sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
And one of the things they have in common is gut leakage. So you have an important part of your immune system is the bacteria, viruses, protozoa, et cetera, that live in your body. In fact, if we took your body and we took out all the human cells, put them in one pile, and then we took out all the protozoa and viruses and the non-human cells and put them in another pile, there'd be more cells in the non-human pile than the human pile, making up your body. So your relationship with those organisms is very important. Just in your digestive system, there's 5 pounds. That is over 1 trillion creatures. 1,000 different strains in a healthy person of organisms, living creatures swimming around in your digestive system, eating, drinking, breathing, and defecating inside you right now. And what your organisms are pooling inside your digestive system depends on what you feed them, what you shove in your mouth. If you shove plant-based foods in your mouth, you have 1,000 strain of completely diverse organisms. You shove a lot of animal foods in your mouth, sugars and other processed, you have different organisms and different poo. If that's one of the reasons why meat eaters tend to have a lot of TMA, which is trimethylamine oxidase, which leads to heart disease and cancer and problems. Plant eaters tend to have more vitamin K, which is fertilizer. So if you want to have fertilizer from your organisms rather than toxic waste, you better be careful of what you feed them.
Makes sense.
So our diet becomes really important. When you feed them pro-inflammatory materials like meat, fish, fowl, eggs, dairy products, oil, salt, and sugar, which makes up 93% of the calories of the average person in industrialized society, you get a lot of inflammatory markers, IL-6, TNF alpha, acute phase reactive proteins. And that inflammation damages the gut, amongst other things. And then proteins can leak through the gut, stimulating the immune system, which your body reacts to, but eventually it can become confused. And in genetically vulnerable people, the body begins to attack its own tissues. If it attacks the colon, we call it ulcerative colitis. If it attacks the joints, we call it rheumatoid arthritis. If it attacks the lungs, we call it asthma. If it attacks the skin, you call it vasculitis, or call it whatever you want. These itis conditions all have something in common. They all tend to be triggered or aggravated by gut leakage. And so you're getting materials exposed to the immune system that shouldn't be there. Well, what does the medical profession do? They say, oh, it's your immune system attacking itself. No problem. We will give you very powerful medications that will shut down your immune system. And at first, it's like a dream because you feel better. And then it becomes a nightmare because it turns out you need your immune system. And when you take powerful drugs to suppress the immune system, you start developing other problems, sometimes worse than the disease you were treating, including things like cancer. And so as a consequence, the treatment of autoimmune disease really sucks over the long run. So what's the alternative? Well, first what we do is get people off medications and then fast them. And in fasting, there's powerful antioxidant effects and the gut heals. You start seeing a reduction of gut. Plus there's nothing to leak as you're fasting. And then if you measure inflammatory markers in fasting, these acute phase reactive proteins, they go down. Pain goes down. Healing takes place. Then we go on a whole plant food SOS-free diet. We don't have the oxidative damage that's coming from the diet. And you can manage these conditions without the damaging medications. Now the problem is you have to do dangerous and radical things like eat well, exercise, go to bed on time, manage your stress. And a lot of people are addicts and they don't want to give up the addiction to the short-term pleasure-seeking self-indulgent behavior, so they don't want to do it, or they do part of it. They get rid of the oil but not the salt, or they get rid of the oil and the salt but not the sugar, or they get rid of the oil, salt, and the sugar but not the animal foods, because you need to have large quantities of meat, people think. So the problem is lots of fractional results from lots of fractional interaction. What we've done and what we've been able to demonstrate in the research that we've published is that you can manage these conditions both short-term and long-term, but it requires controlling diet, sleep, and exercise.
Going home with the playbook, basically.
Before I forget too, all the claims that I'm making here are pretty radical, but we've got good evidence published in peer-reviewed journals to support that. And if you go to our website at truenorthhealth.com, you can download those studies. You can read them for yourself. And they've been published in journals like the British Medical Journal, in a variety of peer-reviewed journals, Nutrients, and Curious, and journals that do exhaustive peer review. The data is credible, and you can read it and you can see it for yourself.
Beautiful. And I love that you're putting on that evidence, because there's people who are going to come there and go, okay, what is this stuff? You know what I mean? Is it real? Of course, naturally. Only now, we were talking about off air how fasting is sort of kind of starting to blow up now.
Well, when I started to do this, was opened True North Health Center 1983, 84. So it's been about 40 years. Fasting was considered criminal quackery. Okay. Now we're cutting edge researchers. We're doing exactly the same thing we've been doing for 40 years. Wow. But fasting has gained some notoriety, in part because of people like Walter Longo publishing Journal of Metabolism in 2015, fabulous overview on impact and the biochemical changes that occur in fasting in animal studies and now in human studies. So there's a lot more credible scientific literature published. There's a lot of popularity. And also there's this new phenomena that's showed up just recently called podcasts, where large numbers of people can get exposed to information relatively easily. Whereas in the past, the media was more tightly controlled. Yeah. And so in order to get radical ideas exposed, you had to get somebody that was not so good. Yeah. Whereas now you can get these, radical comes from radicus, which means root or cause. So these are radical ideas because they're trying to deal with the cause of the problem. But there's not too many, say, sponsors out there that are too excited about, promoting fasting and whole plant food, SOS-free diets. Right. And so you can see where it might have been hard under traditional media exposure to get a voice. Whereas now, this whole internet and podcast has kind of disrupted the information distribution system. And so people like me that, have ideas that seem kind of outrageous are able to actually talk to large numbers of people. And then people can decide for themselves whether or not, it's reasonable or not reasonable.
Yeah, yeah. But to me, more than reasonable. I mean, like you said, you have your science. I've always been looking at fasting for many years. I haven't done my own medically supervised fast, I'll admit that. Yeah. But I have done a week-long water one. But man, I went nice and slow because I know that years ago I got kind of sick from just no one told me, and I just started jumping right back in and eating.
That's why we have a telemedicine practice where we have doctors that are experienced in fasting for people that say don't want to come to a facility. Yeah. Maybe they don't have access to that, but want to do a fast. We can work with those patients and their local doctor to make sure that history exam and lab is done, that they rest properly, and most importantly, that they be prepared to terminate the fast in a controlled way. You don't go on a long fast and then just go back to especially conventional eating or overeating, because you can get really sick. That's the big mistake that people make. Or if they're on medications, that really you cannot fast safely on medications. So those have to be appropriately withdrawn or managed. And so it's really easy to make a mistake that is completely preventable. So the way we do that is we provide expert support. We have them work with their local doctor. We make sure that the baseline lab is done, and that advise them and coach them so that they go through it and they can do it safely. And make sure they're a good candidate for it. That's probably in fact, we offer a free service to anybody. If they go onto our website at truenorthhealth.com, complete the registration forms, I'll review their medical history with them, make sure they're a good candidate, and then refer them to the most appropriate person to help support them go through that process safely. And so that's something that people can take advantage of. It doesn't cost them anything, gives them a chance to get somebody with experience to kind of give them some coaching.
Oh, amazing. There you go, right? Like anyone has access to it.
Absolutely. If you have access to the internet, then you've got access to
it. And I am a big proponent of fasting. My friend just messaged me the other day. We want to go to Joshua Tree and do a week-long fast. But maybe we'll just go to True North Health, right? .com, and we'll go check it out. That it's funny. I was just thinking about when you were talking, I go, should we just go there? Well, that would be amazing, right? Do it the proper way, and we could be guided and supervised.
It doesn't matter where you fast, as long it's how you fast that matters.
Now, when it comes to something as important as sleep, foundation. Think about it. It is the foundation. You cannot even feel good in your body if you don't sleep. I don't care about anything else. If you're sleeping poorly, it's going to be tough. I believe in prioritizing quality, comfort, and most importantly, health. This is why Birch mattresses have been my top choice for so many years. All right, let's talk about what sets Birch mattresses apart. They are crafted with organic and natural materials that are sustainably sourced. It is essential to me to choose a mattress that aligns with my values. You know that. And my values are clean, quality, non-toxic. It doesn't release those volatile chemicals that we're breathing in for the life of the bed. So birch is so important because I know I'm sleeping on the materials that are good for me and good for the planet, man. We're not disconnected from everything we experience, including nature and the environment. So birch mattresses are a breath of fresh air in a world filled with a lot of synthetic materials, you know that. And they're free from polyurethane foams, one of the nastiest ones for off-gassing and chemical risks, endocrine disruptors like hormone disruption. I've been sleeping on my birch mattress for 3 years now. It's the best. It's a game changer. It's comfortable. It supports my body. It feels like I'm sleeping on a cloud. It's mildew resistant. It's clean. It's not, when you open it, it doesn't smell like chemicals. And I know a lot of you out there have a bed that when you open, it smells like chemicals, right? That's for the life of the bed. So if you're in the market for a new mattress, Birch offers a 100-night sleep trial so you can experience a difference for yourself risk-free. Plus, with a 25-year warranty, it's got flexible payment plans and financing options. So Birch has your back for the long haul. And they ship for free within the United States. If you want a Birch mattress, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it, it's been a long time sponsor because I love it, birchliving.com/heal-thyself to get 20% off of your Birch mattress plus 2 free pillows. That is birchliving.com/heal-thyself.
So the principles are: be a good candidate, rest when you fast, and stay hydrated. Okay, and that's hard for people, particularly, people are taking care of children and teenagers and husbands and wives, and they've got jobs and work. So, for example, you're not safe to drive when you're fasting. Your reactive times are going to be altered by the fasting process. The benefit you're going to get is not going to be the same as if you don't rest. So one of the advantages to doing inpatient care like at True North Health is it's enforced rest, and people take care of everything for you, and they're, you're away from those distractions and all
wonderful.
that. So that part of it's good. You have doctors that are looking in twice a day, examining people, making sure that the unusual but possible issues are managed properly. And then refeeding. We have an excellent chef, so people are fed properly. And there's no choice but whole plant food, SOS-free foods. And we have a specific protocol we follow. Interestingly enough, we have a book coming out. It's called Can Fasting Save Your Life? And it has all of these protocols in it in detail that you can share with your physician. And it's all laid out, the stuff for doctors as well as for people. And that'll be out in June. And it's designed specifically for this purpose, so people can have all the information at their fingertip. Everything we have, everything we do is freely available, including, for example, even the educational programs we offer to patients when they're at the center. They can go to our website without cost and tune in, because we live stream our lectures every day. We have 2 lectures every day. People are free to get access to that information. So there's nothing magic at True North Health. It's just that it makes it easier to do it right.
Right.
So if you can do it someplace else or do it at home, you still got to do it right.
But you still got to
That's
do it
all.
right. Yeah, you can. Everyone just wants to jump in and do it their own way.
Right.
But we have to. You mentioned like the ways to do it safely and effectively, and that's super exciting. The last part I want to talk about, and something that I worked in oncology for many years, is I remember looking at studies on intermittent fasting, and I would look at studies on women who fasted at night, woke up in the morning, and if they ate under X amount of hours, there's elevated mortality. I was like, wow, this is so powerful. Why didn't we learn this? Why doesn't every school learn this? And now you said people with cancer come to the clinic, but it's certain types of cancer.
Well, we've published the results on certain types of cancer. For example, lymphoma, British Medical Journal, the first case report ever published in the British Medical Journal on the effective treatment of follicular lymphoma. We had a patient, 42-year-old female, came in with stage 3 follicular lymphoma, excisional biopsy confirmed, tracked for 2 years, told to go to chemotherapy, decided to try an alternative, came in fasted for 21 days, stage 3, so she had upper and lower extremity palpable lesions, resolved. Went back in, saw her oncologist, got a follow-up, 2 months, 6 months, 1 year, whole body CT, negative cancer. So we published this case report, and they said, look, 10% of lymphoma patients go through periods of remission, or if we give them enough chemotherapy, we can put them into remission temporarily, and then it comes back. So follow her for 3 years, and then let us know whether she's able to maintain it. So we followed her for 3 years, cancer-free at 3 years, submitted a follow-up study, published in the British Medical Journal. Now we just recently published the 10-year follow-up on this patient. Is a part of a cohort with other follicular lymphoma. In fact, we have one stage 4 metastasized to the bones, 40-day water fast, follow-up whole plant food SOS-free diet, second 40-day water fast. And now it's 4 years later. doing great. Other patients with follicular lymphoma doing well. So we've got a cohort that has been submitted and has been accepted for publication in a medical journal, and then we're going to hopefully use that as justification to do a clinical trial.
Wow.
So, what we've found is that follicular lymphoma tends to be responsive, and the reason we can publish is because it's not considered unethical to get lymphoma patients well. Whereas it would be unethical to treat, for example, breast cancer, because there's an accepted standard medical protocol that they believe has positive effects. So delaying or deferring treatment would be considered unethical. Nobody would publish that research. So with the case of follicular lymphoma, it's known and accepted that treatment doesn't alter all-cause mortality, and that even the remissions that are induced tend to be followed by, as you well know, things metastasize and become a mess. So in the case of lymphoma, they decided that they didn't think it was unethical that we got this person well because watchful waiting is an accepted procedure. And we've published a fasting safety study, as we mentioned, that shows that fasting can be done safely if it's done according to protocol. So we haven't published outcome data on other types of cancer yet. So we're not going to talk about other types of cancer. We will talk about what we've been able to publish in the literature. And we believe that lymphoma is an effective option for treatment, and we're proving it.
Unbelievable.
But it takes a long time, because you've got to not only get the person well, but then you got to keep them well. And for example, in this particular woman's case, we got her on that whole plant food diet. And I explained to her she had to stay on that diet because it could be fatal, because I would track her down and kill her. Yeah. And she apparently believed me, because she's been very compliant, and now 10 years in, this is a highly motivated woman, because she's got young kids. Yeah. She wants to see those kids grow up. And a lot of women, it's interesting, things they might not do for themselves, they'll do anything for those kids. You hear these stories, they're running to burning buildings, they lift up the edge of the bus. I mean, female species is amazing, especially mothers. And it's not just humans. The stories are famous about, what animals will do to protect their young.
That's right.
And so, I think that may be why it's easier working with women sometimes, just because if they're motivated, they'll do anything, even eat well, exercise, they'll go to bed on time.
100%. Yeah. God forbid. We do the things.
Yeah, men, but
it's a little bit harder.
I tell a lot of guys they can come in or not, as long as they send in their wife. Because we know who's going to do all the work.
And then she's going to come into the household, and that inspiration is going to start expanding.
I've got data, too, that shows that if you have high compliance in a wife, in a couple, that the male compliance tends to be much higher. That makes sense. So it's like, I know who I got to convince.
Exactly. So for the folks who, they go, listen, I want to come up to True North in a little bit. I have an open time in March or April or May. Is there a way that we can just start playing around with the fasting on an intermittent scale? Is there?
Yes.
And what would you suggest?
Well, I suggest that everybody fast every day for between 12 and 16 hours. So that means you don't eat 3 to 4 hours before you go to bed at night. It means that maybe you delay breakfast in the morning till you get a chance to do some exercise, because it turns out there's a disproportionate amount of fat that seems to be burned during that time. The point is, if you're trying to lose weight, so we're talking about 16 hours of fasting every day. And that means an 8-hour feeding window. And during that 8 hours, you limit yourself to whole plant foods that are free of salt, oil, and sugar, and animal foods. If you do that, you can expect you're going to get progressive weight loss. You're going to be able to make improvements in your health. If you're not trying to lose weight, you might need a larger feeding window, because it's hard to get enough calories to maintain, especially if you're vigorous, active, young. So you might need a 12-hour feeding window to get enough calories in. But you still don't eat 3 to 4 hours before you go to sleep at night. Yeah. So then people that are eating late at night are not usually eating because they're hungry, and they shouldn't be if they've had a good dinner. And that means a dinner that's not full of sugar that causes your insulin to go up, and then the sugars to drop, and then your brain to think you're hungry, and then you get binging and craving, and it's a mess. But a high mineral content, vegetable-dominated diet, you shouldn't be hungry, but what people are is tired. So they'll eat, and it stimulates them, and they feel better, so they thought, oh, maybe I was hungry. They were tired, or they're bored. So they eat because it's entertaining, or they eat because they're angry. I've had many women tell me they only eat chocolate when their husband makes them mad. And I said, I understand that, but instead of you eating it, put the chocolate down and make him eat it.
Oh.
Why should you suffer because he makes you mad?
Right,
You know.
right, right.
So the point is, you still don't eat 3 hours before you go to bed, but your feeding window might vary depending on your caloric needs and your body situation. But if you're trying to lose weight, 8-hour window. Trying to gain weight, 12-hour window.
Okay.
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 And then eat generous, large quantities of low density foods. So lots of fruits and vegetables and steamed and starchy vegetables. Smaller quantities of the more concentrated food, nuts, seeds, grains and beans, that kind of thing. And stay away from all the processed flour, sugar. Basically, I tell people this. Close your eyes and go inside yourself and ask yourself, do I really, really, really want whatever it is? And if the answer is truly yes, you can't have it. You get nothing. Because if you really, really, really want it, it's likely banging on the pleasure trap. It's likely an addictive response. If you go up to somebody and say, hey, we got to put you on this special diet. You can't have carrots for a while. They don't go, what do you mean I can't have carrots? Right. Like, okay, I have carrots. I like them, but I can live without. You ask somebody to give up chocolate or cheese or dairy products oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
It's true. It is to the T, that dopamine, the rush that they're getting from those foods.
It's addiction.
And you said something, working out in the morning on a fasted state, better?
Yeah, well, in terms of fat loss.
In terms of fat loss.
Okay, so there's some evidence. It's not overwhelmingly compelling, but there's some evidence that if you do this intermittent fasting where you don't eat for your time and then you delay your breakfast and do some vigorous aerobic exercise in the morning before you start eating, that there's a higher proportion of those calories that will be derived from fat. That's the claim. Okay.
Powerful.
I think that limiting the feeding window does seem to help some people avoid overeating, though. And particularly if you're filling up with as much low density food as you can in an 8-hour window, it's very difficult to get excess calories and maintain obesity. And so people begin losing weight. And so, sense. It's what you eat, it's how you eat. The other thing I'd suggest to people is how you eat can be an important issue. If you eat in a calm, quiet place, you chew your food thoroughly, you'll digest it better, you get better feedback, your satiated mechanisms get a chance to process the food. Whereas if you're just driving in and getting 2,000 calories of grease and swallowing it before you even hit the road, may not be the best way in terms of maintaining optimum health and weight loss. Maybe it's not a good idea to watch the news, and particularly watch the news when you're trying to eat. May not be the best idea. Sensationalized, worst experiences of everybody's life, all brought to you in living color, probably not a good idea. I was suggesting to people that maybe they shouldn't be worrying about all the things they can't do anything about. They got enough in their life where they might actually have an impact. Their friends, their family, their kids, their work. They don't need to worry about every awful thing that's happening on the planet every day. They could be a fully informed citizen. Maybe they get caught up once a month or once a year. Okay? Believe me, it's all the same. It's not going to change that much. And focus more on things you can actually do something about, because the amount of stress people is under, and that constant stress apparently is associated with production of stress hormones, and that's probably not helpful for anything from weight loss to health maintenance. So maybe we need more time, not overwhelmingly tied into our electronic media, tied into some of the sensationalism that's going on. I don't know. Maybe that's, just me, but
it'll play a big role. We know that, So beautiful. Like, now we have a big picture. Now we know that fasting will help chronic diseases. Everyone, us Americans, are dying from these diseases of kings. We talked about the visceral fat, the inflammation that's coming from the body. We talked about the emotional components from it, the cleansing, the spiritual, and then we really went into how addicted we are to everything. And the incredible, to me, it's like when you give the body the ability to, in its own intelligence, do what it knows to do through fasting, it's going to start doing it. And like you said, depending on exactly knowing in its intelligence what you need, and it'll do it.
There's another thing. We did a study recently on women, because as you know, almost all the research that's done is done on men. Women are like second-class citizens when it comes to focus in research. But we did a study recently on women, and these were healthy women, metabolically healthy women, which, by the way, is rare. 88% of the people in industrialized countries are not metabolically healthy. A lot of people we found for this study thought they were healthy, but when we actually tested them, look at their cardiometabolic markers and blood tests, didn't meet the standard. Where we found most of the metabolically healthy people? They were staff at True North Health.
Wow.
that eat and live there. They live there, they eat there, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, we took these healthy women and we said, what would happen to their metabolic markers and their blood pressure and their lipids? Now remember, these are normal, healthy people. Normal weight, they're not overweight. They have normal lipids, they have normal blood pressure, normal cardiometabolic markers. But when you look at them after fasting, and this was relatively short-term fasting, 7 to 10 days, the magnitude of change in healthy people was even higher than the sick people. Mm. It may be that the people that get the most benefit of fasting are actually the healthy people using it preventatively before they get sick in order to stay healthy. And we're actually going to be doing a long-term study where we enroll large numbers of people and get them on whole plant food, SOS-free diets, and then every year fast for a week or two, and then track long-term to find out, you know, how strict do people need to be to avoid the debility that is common in the last 10 or 20 years of life. You know, people find themselves unable to talk or move, lying in nursing home beds, sometimes for years or decades, because they've had the stroke, the heart attack. We think the most important thing isn't life expectancy, it's healthy life expectancy. How long you live is largely going to be determined by genetics and luck, but how well you live in the time you have is largely determined by diet and lifestyle issues. And so what we think we're doing is trying to encourage people not just to live to their full potential, have a good life and then a good death where you go to sleep and don't wake up, rather than find yourself debilitated for years. Yeah. And the way to do that, we think, is going to be diet, sleep, exercise, and maybe periodic fasting as well.
Fantastic. We're getting the prescription pad out right here, and we're writing it all out because it's in, again, nature's intelligence. This is exactly what you're saying. This is the things that we don't want to do because it's not like, give it to me now. Why don't I feel it? I need it ASAP. I can't do this.
Everybody's trying to hack the system and figure out a way to do something, take something, so that they don't have to actually live healthy.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, that's completely understandable. Mm-hmm. You know, it's our natural tendency, and that's why it's so easy to sell people on trying to find a way around the pleasure trap, rather than to recognize it and avoid it.
You have the book that you mentioned. What was it called?
Our first book is The Pleasure Trap, Mastering the Hidden Force That Undermines Health and Happiness. A really disturbing book that doesn't tell you what you want to hear, but what you need to know to get healthy. And our new book that will be coming out in June called Can Fasting Save Your Life, which summarizes all of our and other people's research on fasting and provides people all the tools they need to make sure they don't screw it up.
Powerful. And where is True North?
True North is in Santa Rosa, California, about an hour north of San Francisco.
And if I want to go, I go on the website, I give you guys a call. How does that work?
So you go to truenorthhealth.com, you fill out the registration forms. We get a free phone conversation to talk about, are you a good candidate, get you to the right resources. If you decide to come to True North Health, you come to True North Health, you'll be under the care of a physician. You'll be monitored twice a day by our staff doctors. We'll go through careful refeeding, and we call it education. It's actually like brainwashing, but it's intense education. Again, available to the people at the center as well as people remotely. And then we want to, encourage you long term to adhere to this so you get a really good result and make us look good.
There you go. There you go. I love that. Doc, thank you so much, man. I really feel your passion for your work. So I know that when you're in your passion, it's less work. It's the work that you do for the world, and you are absolutely in service. I really wish that most doctors can follow in the footsteps of the passion and the gifts that you're giving people.
You know, the thing is, most physicians don't get the opportunity to see what I see because under medical care, for example, if you're treating high blood pressure or diabetes, you know from the beginning, you tell the patients, look, you'll be on these drugs the rest of your life.
Yeah.
They're saying, look, we guarantee you, if you do what you're told, you'll never get well.
Yeah.
And we have a chance to do the opposite, which is to give people the tools so they can actually have the body heal itself.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot more fun to do medicine when you're actually getting a chance to see people get well than telling them they're going to be sick forever.
Amen. Amen. What a way to end it. Thank you so much for being on the show, Doc. All of your wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you really appreciated that one. Took some notes and get the fasting. Thank you.